I am a positive man. Some people call me a positive Pete. If we want to tie it into my real name, you could go with the smiling Simon. But sometimes you just have to hold your hands up and be truthful, and right now, Raw ain't that great. And as always, if you are entertained by it and you sit down and you get 3 hours of gloriousness washing up right in your face, then more power to you. That's exactly what it's meant to do. So if it does do that, you have won, and technically, the rest of us have lost. However, ever since WrestleMania 37 and kind of all of 2021, WWE's flagship show has entered into such muddy waters, I wouldn't be completely against the idea of just hitting the reset button and starting again. Why? Can't slap my head at the moment for reasons you don't need to know. Here's why. The major problems to begin with. Now, a lot of these have been prevalent, especially over the last couple of months, but really you could attribute them to Raw for some time. 1, we get the same feuds over and over again. 2, we get the same wrestlers in multiple segments. 3, we get constant rematches. 4, sometimes we get no story. And 5, sometimes we get story, but we don't get any follow-up. And I could go on too, and we're going to break all of those down in a second, but the end result is a television show that you don't actually have to watch week to week in order to keep up with it, because every single iteration kind of exists within its own bubble. Because things happen on one Monday night and then we get to a next one and we just do more stuff. There's no crossover, there's no cliffhangers, there's no narratives. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's going to happen next. I mean, sometimes we get told what we should be looking forward to, and then it doesn't even happen. For example, I am sat here over 2 weeks later, and I'm still waiting for Randy Orton versus Braun Strowman, which was advertised, and we never got it. Either way, let's get into the feuds. And look, I don't even mind that WWE wants to do another match between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre for the WWE title. But if this was in the plans, why did we get that finish at WrestleMania 37? Kind of looked like Bob had it all sewn up to me. So when we do just go right back to it, shock horror, all of a sudden you sit there and you start saying, well, I don't really think wins and losses even matter. It gets even more dubious now because it certainly does seem like we put Braun Strowman into the WrestleMania Backlash match so that we can actually get to Money in the Bank and once again do Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley in a one-on-one. But that really is confusing because it means we put Strowman into that in order to protect Drew McIntyre from taking a loss at WrestleMania Backlash, but we did that by Drew McIntyre taking a loss on Raw. My brain. We've also got all this stuff with Mace and T-Bar and countouts and DQs, and if nothing else, we have had that tag team match between those guys and Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman 3 times in 7 days. And given what happened on the most recent episode of Raw, by Jove, I think we're about to get it again. I mean, there's only so much of anything that I can take. The law of diminishing returns is a very real thing, but also when we once again return to the most recent episode of Raw, when these words are coming out of my mouth, Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre were in 3 matches throughout the whole thing. And nobody else does that. AEW doesn't do that. Ring of Honor doesn't do that. Impact doesn't do that. New Japan doesn't do that. And that doesn't mean that you can't do that, but WWE relies on this all of the time, and slowly but surely it's become a crutch. And that's doubly true when you have this amazing and ridiculous roster. Why don't you just use it? But we don't. Instead, we just get the same thing over and over, like Elias and Jackson Riker, who's chilling out on the Starship Enterprise, taking on the New Day. And look, I pretty much like anything that Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods do because they make me laugh, but we still don't even know what beef they have with each other, which is very difficult for a video like this, because I want to tell you why, and I can't. And apparently it's all due to the fact that AJ Styles and Omos haven't been cleared to appear on television since they won the World Tag Team titles at WrestleMania 37. But that doesn't mean you just ignore them. That doesn't mean you pretended they never existed on the program. Why can't one of the announcers just go, hey, AJ Styles and Omos think they're such big shit right now, they've decided they don't want to turn up on Raw, and that can be a reason for all the other tag teams to go, well, dagnabbit, that doesn't sound very good at all, we should go and beat him up. This idea, however, that we have to treat it like a T-Rex and nobody move or say anything because maybe nobody will notice, we all notice WWE. And do you want to know why we all notice? Because we're all massive geeks and we're all massive nerds. And moving on from that, let's discuss long-term stories. Now, I am all for long-term stories. I think when done right, they are tremendous. But once more, you can't just do them for the sake of doing them, which is when we bring in the women's tag team division. I mean, it is literally stuck in a constant loop that never goes anywhere, and if you wanted to make the movie Groundhog 2 and base it on this, you absolutely could. Also, Naomi and Lana keep getting title shot after title shot after title shot, even though if you actually go look at their win-loss record, they've barely got any victories. And this isn't a knock on the talent either, by the way. They are all super duper performers that have got to the top of their craft, but they are put in impossible situations. Wrestling is always going to be at its best when it evokes real emotions from the fans and the wrestlers themselves. But when you go so far out of the way to do that, a lot of what you do try and execute is going to fall flat. The thing with Raw, though, is that you get the flip side to that seconds after they've tried to make you feel something. Take everything that happened recently with Charlotte Flair. Because she was suspended on a Monday, chilled for a week, and then returned on the next Monday, meaning this suspension took her away from her job for a grand total of 0 days. I mean, what an absolutely crappy suspension. I know she got fined as well, but just fine her. If you have no plans for an actual suspension, why even bother? It was literally a waste of breath. Imagine you put on any kind of Netflix series. I don't know, Ozark. You put on Ozark, there's Jason Bateman with his absolutely rubbish life, and at the end of one episode, he gets kidnapped by one of these drug dealers, these money launderers, and they're like, we're gonna kill you, Jason Bateman, you're in a world of trouble. And then you went to the next episode, and the drug dealer just went, don't worry about it, you go back to your weird family. And then they hug. They just hug, and maybe they give each other a little kiss. You would be absolutely livid. And yes, I'm exaggerating for effect here, but when you've got the likes of Buddy Murphy, Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexander, Lince Dorado, Grand Metalik, Nikki Cross, Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, Angel Garza, and a bunch of others, surely we could have a little bit more fun, and yet we really don't seem to want to be having any fun. I don't care if we try something new with someone either and it falls flat on its face. I would appreciate the fact you took the risk. I mean, that's what life's all about. And the counterpoint to this always seems to be, well, if we did do that, everybody would moan on the internet. People are moaning on the internet anyway. That's just what they're gonna do. You could grab this person and make them the WWE champion, and they'd still go on Reddit and Twitter and social media and go, I didn't like the way I was booked. To wrap this up, Raw just isn't all that enjoyable at the moment, which is why the best thing we had recently was everything between Riddle and Randy Orton, because there were two new characters interacting with each other, and it was two characters that had very defined roles. Even if you don't like how Riddle's portrayed or how he's being used, he has still established who he is, and now he's able to play off it. And I swear too, if they get broken up just because WWE feels they need to do that match on WrestleMania Backlash or whatever pay-per-view, well, you already know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tweet about it. I mean, I honestly would go crazy if somebody like Chad Gable was transferred across to Raw, built up a little bit, and then put in a WWE title program with Bobby Lashley. And it doesn't have to be anything long. Bob can still win, but if we were able to get all the bits and pieces to come together, the fact that it's so new, I would be massively intrigued. And again, straight away people go, well, that's not going to do very good for business. WWE doesn't even need to worry about that anymore. They're not trying to sell pay-per-views. They're not even trying to get good television ratings because the money has already been accounted for. And I know they're still going after those things, but it is not the priority. In closing, sometimes and a lot of the time, Raw just feels like the exact same show. Like, be honest with yourself. Over the last few weeks especially, has Raw started, or in the first hour, have you thought to yourself, am I watching the same show from last week? Because I know I have, and I don't want that. Raw surely has a special place in our brains and our hearts for all of us because it's been around for so long. I want it to fly higher than those birds when Riddle kicks his flip-flops off. And I get that it can't happen overnight, and I get that we're gonna have to be patient, and I get that we're gonna have to give it some time, but at the moment, I don't even feel like we're doing that, and it makes me a very sad pup. Whatever the hell that means. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about Raw at the moment. And again, like I say, if you're enjoying it, I'm genuinely happy for you. I just want you to be entertained. Then like the video, share the video, and subscribe. We have a website, it's called whatculture.com. We, of course, are on social media. We've made that very clear. And if you'd like to stay on the channel, please do click another video. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you for joining me for the Y series. Make sure you have a great day. Make sure you have a great week. And of course, we'll all watch Raw in a few days' time. Maybe that's also the problem, but at least we can always up those downs. Cheap plug.